Hi, folks. You're watching The Games That You Want Are Cheap Now. Only one condition. You will have to want games that will be on the video. But if you didn't get here through the black arts magic of YouTube's autoplay algorithm, you already knew that. You clicked on the thumbnail, didn't you? So, if you knew that, you probably might know this is a regular episode. Well, I say regular, periodic. Not regular in the sense that it comes out every week, but at least once or twice a month. About games that are on sale or given out for free on online video game sales platforms for PC. First up on the list, the Epic Games Store with Farming Simulator 22. A game for people that like farming, and no, not farming for resources in MMO or clicker titles. Actual farming with, as the illustration shows, fields of crops that you need to sow and reap. You can drive heavy machinery while drunk on beer you crafted in your microbrewery because you're a farmer. You grow your own hops and aromatic herbs and whatnot, and you're also probably German. For some reason, this game is very popular in Germany. I don't know what it is. German farmers' kids that ironically play Farming Simulator while they still don't work on the family farm. I don't know. Whatever the reason may be, if you're into farming, this is the simulation series for you. Moving on from the give out games from Epic Games Store, we're into Steam territory. And steaming hot off the production line of digital copies of games, that's a very quick, painless production. Just replicate a few ones and zeros here and there. We've got a fair mix of games. Of course, these are not all the games that are on sale, but those that I thought would provide a nice bouquet of different genres and more recent, more well-established titles. First on the list, Middle-earth Shadow of War, the sequel to Shadow of Mordor, if my memory serves. Third-person action RPG set in Middle-earth, Lord of the Rings territory. You're this wraith-powered character, and you are trying to shape the territory in Middle-earth. You're kind of a war leader. You're battling and trying to conquer and control and manage territories, and yeah, well, that's a part of the game at least. And there's this, what did they call it, a nemesis system? Sort of this carousel selection of dynamically generated leadership structure for the enemies of orcs and whatnot that you can do battle with. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you never played the first game, you might want to play the second game, though I am told it's a bit on the overlong and tedious side to actually finish. But solid choice at €4. Moving on to a management game, 2 Point Campus, follow-up to 2 Point Hospital? 2 Point Clinic? 2 Point Hospital, I think it was. Which is, well, was a theme hospital-inspired game. 2 Point Campus following up with hospital joke management to university joke management. And, well, if you, well, maybe you're not familiar with the genre, but if you liked comically driven management games with silly concepts and, well, general silliness in terms of what you're managing and how you're managing it, but with an actual complex and in-depth strategic view, This is right up your alley. If you already played 2 Point Hospital, Theme Hospital, what was it? Roller Coaster Tycoon? Yeah, Roller Coaster Tycoon. Right in the theme, Planet Coaster, we're going to see about in just a bit. Those type of games. €8 is not a lot to play the latest and probably not the greatest, but very good entry in that style. Moving on to Cocoon. Probably less well known, but my god, is this a precious puzzle game. If you want to feel smarter than you actually are, while solving puzzles that not necessarily very easy, but certainly made intuitive and possible to figure out without having to bang your brain against the wall. Well, you might still do that, but you don't have to. You just think it out a bit. Search other parts of the world and eventually you'll get there. Cocoon, what a spectacular game. If you don't know what it is, take a look at these short trailers that I'm probably editing in as we speak. And yeah, why not dive in at a very fair price for a fairly recent game. It's been out for 6 months, or 29th of September. 6 months. Next up, XCOM 2, out for a lot longer than that, and while not my favorite in the series, certainly I'd say the best, technically, aesthetically, mechanically it has some, I prefer more complex games, though this has a fair degree of strategic and tactical decision making and light RPG elements to your character management and whatnot. You're essentially managing tactical scenarios, fighting alien invasion force coming to Earth to exploit our resources and the human race. They've been here a long time. We didn't know. Actually, that's more Terror from the Deep scenario, but in this case, they've been here a while because XCOM 1, even if you as a player beat the aliens, the canon ending is, you were just too weak, you didn't beat the aliens at all. They just came, saw, conquered, and subjugated us. And you're fighting against that as a gritty resistance in XCOM 2. Fifth on the list, an unexpected publication of Shin Megami Tensei 3, the Nocturne HD remaster. Japanese games tend to be named, well, much like Japanese cars, but with nonsense, non-Japanese words that sound good to them, but that outside of Japan are just a bit silly, potentially. Nocturne, not so much the case for the game it is, but kind of in that vein. If you don't know what this is, it's a JRPG. You are turn-based combat style that, if you don't know Shin Megami Tensei, let's say, is somewhat inspired by tarot cards and, zodiac signs and that sort of thing. But in a high school universe, Japanese high school universe, in which you manage and you get friends and join your team and whatnot from your high school, all teenagers, and fight the great evil, well, typically serial killer, like in Persona 4 Golden, or other evils, depending on the game. When I say Persona 4, Persona is kind of a parallel series to Shin Megami Tensei, so if you know that, Persona 5 is really the blowout success in the series, but they are trying to build on that success and sort of port over some of that success from Persona to the actual original series, Shin Megami Tensei, that was not so well known outside of Japan. And for good reason, because my god was it hard. And tad too Japanese in the design and choices and controls and whatnot. A bit rigid compared to what audiences outside of Japan are used to, I'd say. But this remaster, it even has a merciful difficulty level introduced for those of us that are not good enough to beat the game legitimately. Like, I wasn't. I only really beat Persona 4 Golden knowing well in advance kind of what to expect in general terms, and level grinding. And even then, there was a few situations where I really felt I was very close to being stuck. But yeah, if you enjoy a bit of level grinding, a bit, not so much as old-styley 2D RPGs, but there's still a bit of that. Or if you just in the merciful mood, not so much, and you can actually finish the game and enjoy the story and the universe and the characters and all that. Planet Coaster, that we referenced earlier, a great management sim in which you can be as creative as you like. So many choices to build your own amusement park, roller coasters. In fact, if you like this, you probably want to take a look at, and if you hadn't, of course, if you're not of that age, hadn't played Roller Coaster Tycoon back in the 90s, this is the game. This is the standard of amusement park management games still today. At less than €2, I mean, what's there to lose? Cartel Tycoon, the game that you probably don't want to play if you have kids and they ask, what are you playing? And you say, oh, I'm playing a management game. Leave out the part that you're managing a drug cartel. Just the concept is interesting. The execution is competent, though I have to say, kind of missed hitting it straight out of the park. So it's, I don't know baseball that well, but it's not a home run. It's one of those hits that kind of hits the wall and bounces back into the field. Still a pretty good hit. And last on the list, Punch Club 2. Fast Forward. If you don't know what Punch Club is, it's a kind of a... how to put it? Well, you play as, essentially, a up-and-coming boxer. And you have to manage your time and your training and, well, your fights, of course. But there's all sorts of secondary, adjacent gameplay elements. I really like the pixel art. There's, again, many games do this. I think it's a bit too stretched out for its own good. Many games would really benefit from a tighter edit. Someone that said, can cut this, squish this up, be shorter, faster, sleeker, but still, a very good game. Over at the Humble Bundle site, quite a few games on sale. Those that stood out to me, all super cheap for what they are. First up, Outcast Second Contact, not a recent game. In fact, this is a kind of a reboot to a fairly old game by now. Outcast, the original. It is pretty good, I have to say, and because it's one of those French Wave games, there's a lot of design elements and choices and that are different from run-of-the-mill third-person shooters, first-person shooters that you often see from elsewhere. Just that, in terms of visual creativity, the art style, and design. Very much an interesting game for barely over €1. €1 is peanuts. Second on the list, Insurmountable, with a very meaty update. So meaty, in fact, that they put it up on the screen title. Well, at least on the thumbnail and on the Steam page as well, I believe. Insurmountable is it is a rogue-like game. You have to climb mountains. It's never quite the same. You can start over and start over and start over. I mean, there's a reason why over a certain altitude on Everest, a lot of people die, and the bodies don't get recovered. They just go up and never come down. Insurmountable, that'll happen to you. You will go up, desperately try to reach the summit of the mountain. You will not always get there. And you just have to start over because you are not coming down and nobody is going up to get your body. A lot of different aspects to take into account. It is a sort of a tactical tile movement based game. Highly recommended. Third on the list here, Warhammer 40k Space Marine Anniversary Edition. This came out, I'd like to say 2010 maybe? 2011? PS3, Xbox 360 era. Not exactly super cheap, but I mean, it's a Warhammer 40k product. If there's one thing Games Workshop likes to do, it is fleecing the fan base as much as they can, for as long as they can, until people are either broke or tired, or just keep paying them oodles of money for, frankly, products that aren't really worth it. This, however, I remember having a great time with it, and though not exactly cheap for at least 10-year-old game, and it has sequel, but between now and then, at least one. I think there's Space Marine 2. Not sure if there's Space Marine 3. The 2, yes, I know they made it. But still, Games Workshop, less than €10. Count yourself lucky. Onward to Vampire the Masquerade, Shadows of New York. No, this is not Vampire the Masquerade 2, though I'm still hoping that will not be crap. Constant reboots and delays don't sound good. In the meantime, you can take a bite. Yeah, it's about vampires. Take a bite into graphical novel games. That's not an insult to the games, I believe. There's some additional aspects to them. And I have to say, though again, they're not exactly masterpieces. This is Shadows of New York. I believe I've played also Coteries of New York. They have interesting writing. And, well, just the setting. Vampire the Masquerade, a world in which vampires live alongside humans and they hide, hence the masquerade, from humans in different ways. And you have to survive and make your place in the vampire society. Well, in New York in this case. Interesting and very cheap. Easy to play. Pick up, play wherever, even on a tablet. Usually graphical novels go well with portables. This is maybe two seating type game. You'll be done in a few hours. And have learned how to survive in a vampire society. You never know. Fifth on the list here, Narcosis. Probably a game very few people have heard about. And, yeah, let me tell you a little story about why that is. It is developed by a French studio. I believe it's a French studio. That, tiny, so people that are ex-employees from bigger studios, AAA studios, namely, I think I watched an interview from the lead dev from this. I believe they worked at Ubisoft at one point. So they worked probably on Assassin's Creed or something at some point. Anyway, once they were working on their own project, they decided to make a game about a dystopian future in which a person, or are they? The person was trapped in underwater, murky, mysterious circumstances and tries to make out of that situation in a amnesia-type game. You know where I'm getting at. Essentially, this is Soma. It only didn't really make it commercially. It started development before Soma. And as things tend to happen in this case, sometimes different movie studios make very similar movies at the same time. Sometimes they actually know that's the case. In this case, I really don't think Soma was aware of this game. The developers of this game were not aware of Soma at any point. And because they were a very small team, they started making this way before Soma was in development. But it took them so long that by the time it was ready, Soma had been out and a success for a while. They didn't really have a marketing budget or anything like that, but if there hadn't been Soma around, I believe this would have filled the Soma gap, as it were, instead of Soma, at least for a while. But it didn't. And it's really worth a play, so if you liked Soma or Amnesia series games, the let me hide from whatever horror lies around this corner type video game in which you're defenseless, essentially, try it out. Pretty sure you will enjoy it. Of course, it's not quite to the same standard as Soma, but still. Following up here, we're on GOG.com, my favorite video games platform to purchase games in because you get them DRM free, and to be frank, the dev teams on the platform, they have done so much for bringing old games back into playable forms, sometimes fixing bugs and everything. And I just heard on the news recently that they will be hosting the up-and-coming Fallout 4 London mod, because it's too big for mod distribution platforms. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm just generally excited. Everything GOG does for gaming in general. Specifically this week, however, we have these 4 games on sale. Disco Elysium. Does anyone not know what this is? Point and click, magnum opus, potentially the best point and click game ever made. Would not be an exaggeration, frankly. I think it's better even than the best of the LucasArts point and clicks. Really. Might not be up right your alley in terms of the themes, the characters, the art style. Even if it's not, I'm sure I'll be able to appreciate the magnificent work put into it. I mean, just the dialogue choices, the game systems, the psychological choices you make, and the world. It's kind of a bleak, but dark humor really shines through, and there's nothing really quite like it elsewhere. Though, if you're looking forward to Disco Elysium 2, please know that one of the people involved with the making of this absolute masterpiece was an incredible douche. I mean, to the point of probably a high-functioning sociopath that essentially pushed everyone out of the game once it became clear it would be a financial success. It was made by an artist's collective, and it took a bloody long time to make. I mean, I think a decade or over, something like that. But you can see the quality of the art and the writing just dripping all over this. It shows how slow brews really have that extra quality and taste when they're done. But most of the people that made this are no longer part of the studio. So this is a case of lightning in a bottle, I think, and corporate douchebaggery ruining everything as usual. So if there's a pre-order for Disco Elysium 2 at any time in the future, big caveat. Buyer beware. Caveat emptor. So, next up, Metro franchise bundle, essentially the Metro Redux games that, if you like Stalker, if you like Fallout, if you like post-apocalyptic games in which, well, it's a Metro game, so you're going to go places, it's just not the metro station under the glass pyramid of the Louvre, you're probably going to go under an irradiated, mutated, horrible creature that will just want to eat your liver and spleen. But you're going places at least in the Metro franchise. Yeah, what a trip. And as I was really making a case for GOG's work on making sure that old games are playable, here we go. Wolfenstein 3D, the mother of all of the FPS genre, let's say. Really, FPS is before Wolfenstein and FPS is after Wolfenstein. I mean, Doom, if you know what that is, Wolfenstein is where that came from. Yeah, the game that killed the Amiga. That's not a good thing, but that's how groundbreaking the game was and how important it was for the gaming industry. And what followed. At €1.50, you can play it now and make sure to kill the Megabot Charlie Chaplin impersonator at the end. Say hi for me. And then, Master of Orion, one of my favorite franchises when I was growing up. 1 and 2, the 1-2 punch. Master of Orion 2 really improved on 1 in, I want to say, every single aspect. Can't think of anything Master of Orion 1 does better than 2, because it kind of follows the same template in a way. There's the same animation screens for invading planets, making technological advances, and so on. There's cutscenes, there's strategic choices, there's ship design, there's all building facilities in your planets, deciding which planets to colonize and which not, terraforming, constructing planets. Yeah. Those were the days. Then came Master of Orion 3. Then came, actually, the reboot I haven't played. There's a recent reboot of Master of Orion that I haven't heard terrible things about. Might be worth taking a look at. Quick jump to a borderline irrelevant games platform, Amazon Prime Gaming. You currently, well, not the only game you can get there, but certainly the cream of the crop, let's say. Tomb Raider, the reboot, Game of the Year edition, a solid game, and the sequels that have come since really have, I wouldn't say equaled the original success, certainly, but have really made sure that the IP is alive and kicking. Healthy. But not Amazon Gaming. And then, to top things off, we're going to go to Gamersgate. You might not be aware of this platform, gamersgate.com. And Fnatic.com. So, Ultra Street Fighter and Devil May Cry HD Edition, fair prices for, even Street Fighter 4 is going on in years now. Devil May Cry Edition HD Collection includes 1, 2, and 3, so again, aging games, but if you like action, kicking arse, you might want to take a look at these two. And if you don't know, Gamersgate, you typically have to activate the game either with a Steam key or a GOG code, typically Steam. But yeah, it's not an installer or they don't have a client or anything. They're just a storefront that actually did fairly poorly out of the whole Gamergate thing. Actually got sold, I think it went so bad. But it sometimes still has some good deals on it. Then Fnatic, man, this only isn't my favorite game of all time because it's so damn depressing and real. This War of Mine, and this is the complete edition. I don't know if that's still the case now, but I don't know if it's the case now. At one point, the studio had... I'm sure it's no longer the case now. The studio had at one point said that all game proceeds for a period from game sales would be directed to humanitarian aid to the Ukrainian people because of the war situation. Apt because this game is possibly the best rendition of the human costs of war, of urban warfare, of genocide, of survival in the direst conditions, and my God, does it play well. And especially the storylines, the pre-constructed campaigns, so you can do a sort of a roguelike experience. You can just play the game over and over. It's always new characters. You can add new characters as you progress through the game and achieve new objectives. And even if you lose, you start over and you have different characters to choose. You have to try to make them survive, essentially, the war. And it's not easy. But there's also these narrative-driven stories that are pre-made campaigns, as it were, with set objectives and incredibly well-written scenarios that really play them if you have the stomach for really heart-wrenching gut punches type situations, because they stick with you. They stay with you essentially forever. These are stories that frankly hit harder and stay in memory longer and deeper than some actual real-world memories you will have from your life, or really dramatic and high-quality movies that you will have burnt into your brain. This game does that. You will not play it, at least if you have a heart and a brain, and leave unscathed by at least understanding a bit more about what it is to live in horrific war conditions and try to desperately survive them and the potential consequences of that for just common folk, regular people, just trying to make it any way they can. Exceptionally good game. And 3 years, a bargain. Moving on to Dear Esther, a walking simulator. So we're splattering styles here and there, so everyone has at least one game that'll interest them. Very cheap, very interesting game. If you look at the screenshot of the images, it is very gray. It is in the Outer Hebrides. If you don't know what that is, they're islands. Look at a map of the UK, you'll find them. the top left. Very interesting game. And, well, maybe not the first walking simulator story-driven type game, but certainly one of the best fairly early ones. Next up, Zool. Not Ghostbusters Zool, friend of Gozer the Gozerian, the Destructor. Zool, as in that little guy that is running around in super colorful backgrounds. Essentially, it was the PC DOS equivalent to Sonic and Super Mario, because we didn't have Sonic and Super Mario. We had Zool and Jazz the Jackrabbit. Back when I was a kid. Never finished it. I never finished Mario either. I did finish Sonic though. Only because, yeah, I played with cousins and friends. Sonic and Sonic 2, I think. You had Sonic and Tails. It was easier that way. Anyway, Zool, Redimensioned, is a sort of a modern version, reimagining of the game. Kind of like Sonic Mania is to Sonic. Zool Redimensioned is that to the original Zool. So you might want to take a look at the original Zool, played in DOSBox or whatever. I don't know if it's abandonware yet, but, well, any case, Zool Redimensioned, interesting if you're a platformer type person, and cheap, like the video game title. Like the video title implied the game would be. Then Snake Pass. Snake Pass is a puzzle game with a very interesting twist. If you hadn't noticed, there's a snake, you control the snake. And humans aren't snakes, so it's not really intuitive to control a snake moving around all snaky-like. By that, it's actually a snake, so it slithers around and wraps around things, and you have to control it and solve puzzles by moving the snake and wrapping around things and clinging on to things, obstacles and whatnot, and get where you need to in the level. Every level has more than one solution, I think, or ways you can sort of work yourself up, typically up. But, yeah. Interesting gameplay, interesting concept. Nothing quite like it elsewhere. For less than €3, you cannot go wrong. And that's it. Those are all the games that I found interesting that are cheap right now. And that you possibly wanted, didn't you? Well, maybe you didn't want them before, but you certainly want them now, right? Yeah, thought so. Till next time.